Hello everyone, I'm Colin. Welcome back to my channel. Today is all about tips and tricks and jigs for doweling jigs. And I'm not going to go any further on it. I'll talk about it as I get started. So let's jump right in. So the doweling jig that I use is something called the Dowelmax. And this is what it comes with. So there's a couple of spacers. I'm going to talk a bit more about those coming up. There's a positioning pin, and I'll talk more about that. Of course, it comes with a drill bit, a little Allen wrench, and a little positioning, I'm not sure what they call it, a little positioning bar here, and I'm going to talk more about that as well. I actually have two of them because some of the builds, especially if I'm making cabinets, you can reconfigure it, and I'll show you how this works in a second here, but you can reconfigure this, will sort of transform into this. So it looks different, but it's for different things. So let's look at some of the things that I've designed for this. So first off, the doweling jig actually comes in a variety of sizes. The 3/8 is the most popular, and that's the one that I use the most. It also comes with a 1/2 inch, a 5/16, and a 1/4. And I just make this little jig here so that I can see the size of the holes depending on the lumber that I'm using and what I'm building. But here's one of the keys. All of them use this collar, the different size drill bits, but they all use this collar. And every one of these collars, if you look closely, you'll see the little set screw or grub screw on there. They're always proud. And when I put these into a drill, and most of us have these hand drills that we hold like this and hold this to attach the bit. These little things stick up, and sometimes I've sort of scraped, in fact, often I've scraped my hand when I'm holding this, when I'm doing the turning on this. So what I've done with all of mine, I take them out, and you get a little Allen screw. They come with it so that you can reposition these, and I'll talk more about these later on. I take these little screws out, and I very carefully grind them so that they are flush, and you'll see that when I start showing you some of my other ones here. So that's the first thing that I do, is grind the little set screws flush so that when I'm changing bits and moving around with bits, I'm not going to be scraping and damaging my hand in the process. Two of the most popular sizes of dowels are a 1.5 inch and a 2 inch. And when you're doing a dry fit, when you've drilled holes in something and you want to do a dry fit to see how it fits, these are very tough to put in. They often need to be tapped in, and pulling them out often requires pliers or something like that. What I do is I undersize mine, and the blue ones are the 2 inch, and I color the red ones for the 1.5 inch, and they slide in and out easily so that I can do a dry fit without having to struggle getting these dowels in and out. So here's the nasty jig that I have. It's an old piece of sheet metal. I think it's 1/4 inch, and I've drilled holes in it. There's 3/8, there's 1/4, and there's 5/16. And what I do in my vise, I just have a little piece of wood underneath there, and I take a raw dowel and I just drive it through, and it stays in there, so I have to use another one. And the reason for the wood underneath here is so that I don't have to go running around looking for these on the floor. Now those are all ready to go. Those are already sized. The next thing I do is just take a felt pen, and you don't have to be fancy, just so that it differentiates it from one that hasn't been sized. So that's how I do that, and I've got the 3 different sizes in there. Now because we can put dowels in the edge, we can put them on the flat, and we can put them on the end, and we have 2 different dowel sets that we're working with, so we can put dowels in there, for example, if that's the kind of thing that we're putting together. Now, one of the things that I've done is I have coordinated. I have 3 different drill bits. So I have a red, see the red on there, there's the blue, and I also have yellow. And what I've done, you can see that the collars are all they're all a different depth in here, so I can, when I'm building cabinets, I can quickly take the yellow. I know it's already coordinated for 3/4 inch. This is a little thicker than that, but for demonstrations, it goes into a 3/4 inch wood because it's a very narrow piece of wood. If I'm using 1.5 inch dowels, I can use the red drill bit, because, and look at it, coordinates with the red dowels. So the red and the red go together. Then of course there's the blue, and the blue coordinates to the 2-inch dowel. So if I'm making 2-inch holes, I'm going to be using 2-inch dowels. I know that that's already preset. Now either of these two can be used in, of course, the end or the edge. The yellow one only is for the tops like this, and it's set for 3/4 inch. Okay, let's talk about alignment for a moment, and alignment is very important to me. I was sold in the first 5 minutes that I ever used this jig, and if you forget about the versatility, the different sizes that you can use, how fast it is, how convenient, what sold me instantly was just how accurate, super accurate and repeatable every time. Now, for those of you who follow my channel, you'll know that I use blue tape on the face edge of everything, and I even put blue tape on the face edge of my dowel. And for those of you with sharp eyes, you'll notice that when I put this together in an earlier clip, look at, there's a reveal here. They don't line up properly, but look at what happens when you turn it around. Look at that, absolute perfect flat. So what that means is you can have control over where you want these dowels to be positioned here, or to a degree on here. And the way we do that is with these spacers. And for example, if I put that in there like that, now instead of aligning this the way it is here, if I were to put that in, look at how much deeper that goes there. See, I can move these over the width of that spacer in there, so that now I can realign these anything. And there's a wider one, there's narrow ones, and of course you can make your own. They're pretty simple to make. Any width, anything that you want. Now, what goes along with the accuracy and the way you can use different things is these things that I made up. I call them dowel planners, and the one that I use the most is this clear one, and I just made it out of clear plastic, and all you do is measure this distance in here, and you can put this in. For example, I laid it on a piece of wood like this, a piece of plastic that fit in there, put this all on and drilled those holes. Now what this is, for example, when I'm planning, and if you watch my last video, you will have seen me doing this, planning where the dowel holes go. Now I have one in red and I have one in black because the clear one is just too hard to see. So we'll move these out of the way for a moment because this all comes together. So when you're making, for example, legs, then one of the ways of putting them together so that they don't interfere is to alternate them. So I've got one here, so I would go 1, 3, 5, and 2, 4, 6 on the other side. And the way you do that, all these are for, is planning. You don't try and align to any of these. You just put this on here because this is the footprint of what's in here. And all it's for is your reference, so that when you're putting your dowel jig on there, that you don't inadvertently put it on this way when it should go this way, because you can see where the holes are supposed to align, and you can double check to see if you're missing, if you're missing holes. Missing holes like this, it's still super strong. You don't have to put dowels in every single hole every single time. It's plenty. These 3/8 dowels are super strong once you get some glue in there. You don't have to worry, especially in a table, about strength. So at some time you're going to want to glue boards together, and the Dowelmax makes it super easy to do this. Now when you get the Dowelmax, you will get a little tool like this. The top looks like that, and it basically just slides back and forth on this bar. There's a little knurl knob on here, It's kind of hard to see. I just ended up putting a piece of tape on here so I can use a very quick reference on here. And I just replaced this knob with a little jig knob on here. You could use anything. It's just a standard 1/4 inch thread. I just did that for the convenience. I also, before I forget, I also have a longer one. If I want to do a long stretch, I can use another bar. I just pick these up, 1/4 inch rod. You can get that from pretty much any local hardware store. So the way it works, very simply, is, and I have 2 boards of different thicknesses to show you how great this is. So basically you end up with your face edge and your face side and your face side, and of course you're edged here so that they go together nicely. And with your dowel, you put the blue to the blue, face side to face side. And in this case, I like to go the 3rd hole from the end. And then I move along to, maybe in this case, it's the center. And I'll put the hole around there. And I just line up this little tool so that that will just butt up to that. Drill my 2nd hole. Move to the last place. Butt that up against that and drill my 3rd hole. And now I've got 3 holes, and I do the same thing, of course, on the other side. And I've got the face side already made up, and it's going to be face side to face side. So I know that it's blue to blue, so I do the same thing here. Blue, 3rd hole, move it along, use the little tool to reposition it. 3rd hole, and so on. So you'll end up with 3 evenly spaced holes or more, depending on how long your board is. And of course, you'll do a dry fit before you put this together. And you don't need to worry about putting glue inside the dowels. It doesn't matter. You just glue the board, and put them together and put them in the clamps. If I can get this lined up, there it is there. And now, because we did face side to face side, check this out. Absolutely flat on top, and you can see underneath that these are different thickness boards, but we have a perfectly aligned top here. You don't even need to plane that. You can, I only ever just sand that to make that absolutely perfectly even. So a very quick way of gluing boards together, and using this little tool with a couple of little accents on it makes it so much easier. Okay, let's talk about the positioning pin for a second. Now, maybe you've cut a board and you've got 5 holes in it. Maybe you wanted to do 6, for example. But you've already taken your jig off. You put it back on. You can use the positioning tool, find that hole just like that, and drill another hole in there for another dowel. And if you're doing that, you want to make sure that you leave the pin in here, because you don't want this Dowelmax to move. Maybe you didn't tighten it enough, but just to make sure that it's dead accurate. But here's the issue. When you're doing that, sometimes when you have a position and maybe you want to do one more and you've got everything set up, and the problem with these, if you take these out, it's possible it can move. I like to make sure that it's stuck in there good. But look at what happens is when the collar for the drill bits interfere with the pin. So what I've done for that, because I don't want to, it's a knurled knob, it's easy to put in and out, and I use it a lot, but I had an old 3/8 drill bit, and now I put the drill bit in there, it locks it, it's locked in there, it can't move anywhere. But now when I put the drill bit in, look at that, it slides in perfectly. So now I have a separate positioning pin, and I just wrapped a bit of tape on the end of it so I can find it easier. Now the next thing, let's talk about depth. And you can see that I've got 2-inch dowels in here, my test dowels. Watch this one when I put it in. You see how that one's a little bit further up? Now I would have noticed this in a dry fit, that didn't go all the way down. Now that can happen. There's 2 reasons that can happen. This one, I actually had to stuff some sawdust or some wood chips down there so that it would be proud. But if you quickly look at the dowels and you see one's high, you've got 2 choices. You can either cut, if you've already glued them in, you can cut that dowel off, not a problem. Or if it's a dry fit and you've noticed it, you can dig around down there to get something out, or maybe you didn't drill deep enough. And that issue happens. It's rare, but it can happen, and it does happen to me. So now I check every hole before I do any glue up, even before I do a dry fit. And it only takes a few minutes to do. That is a T-nut, and I have just taken pliers and pushed the little points down so that I don't catch on that. So it's a T-nut. In this case, you could use a bolt, but I've used some ready rod, some extra ready rod I had kicking around. That in the middle is the locking washer, and then there's a bolt on the end. And the way it works, you just simply tighten that bolt. You can do it by hand, tighten that bolt, and that won't move. And now you can go in every hole, and look at that. It doesn't go all the way down, and that's a quick way of knowing there's a hole, there's an issue with that hole. And now you could go back and re-drill that hole if it's a dry fit and you found it, or you're going to want to put a shorter dowel in there, because you'll never put that wood together if you have one of those sticking up. And I find probably in maybe 10% of the cases I get a little bit of wood in there, so it only takes a minute to go through. And one of my dowels, I always have, you can see that there's a black line. I always have that set to a little bit deeper, because I'm drilling a little bit deeper than the halfway point of that dowel. Well, that concludes my video for today, and all sorts of information today. Maybe too much for one video, but you'll be able to go and check out the article on Woodwork Web, and the link is in the description box. You'll be able to go and check that out. But all sorts of adapters and things that I've done to make the doweling jig even easier and more accurate to use. I'm Colin for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.